Hi, I'm John Grace, and I want to give you a little tour of Enth's Provider Dashboard. The Provider Dashboard is primarily composed of data from CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which is part of HHS in the federal government. The data is provider-based, which is basically hospitals, and has about 1,000 procedures, inpatient and outpatient. Let me go scroll back up to the top. So we can go and pick one of about 3,500 providers. In this case, we've selected Beaumont Health System. We have thousands of inpatient and outpatient procedures. In this case, we've chosen diseases and disorders of the circulatory system. We've chosen 2014 for our base year, and we have 3 benchmarks: country, state, and HRR, hospital referral region. The hospital referral region is a geographical area defined by CMS. So in some more rural areas, it might nearly encompass the state, and in more urban areas, it may be more closely associated with a city. So we already ran that analysis, and the first thing that pops up on our dashboard are 2 maps. We have a volume share map and a revenue share map. Our target provider, again, is Beaumont, and we can hover over Beaumont's little bubble here, and we can see that Beaumont, their revenue for 2014 was almost $58 million for diseases and disorders of the circulatory system. Their share was 6.8%, and they're ranked number 2. And we can go hover over other little bubbles. This is Munson Medical Center in Traverse City. Their rank is number 9. So this map is based on revenue. This map is based on numbers of procedures or patients. So again, we can go take a look at Beaumont, and in this case, Beaumont is ranked number 1 with a volume of 4,322 patients that they saw in 2014. So these 2 maps give us an idea of pricing power. It gives us an idea of where some of these providers are within the market, how big they are, what their presence is, and the competitive landscape within the state of Michigan. This next set of charts has to do with pricing and volume and how a particular provider compares to other providers in the benchmark area. And I'm going to start with the chart on the right, volume. What we're looking at is we've aggregated all the providers within the benchmark area and kind of loosely rounded their volume so we could create a smooth curve. So what we have here is about 40 providers that saw 500 or fewer patients. Around here we have about 10 providers that saw 1,500 patients. And what we see here is Beaumont Hospital. They saw 4,322 patients. They're number 1 ranked in the state of Michigan. They are basically the leading provider in volume for diseases and disorders of the circulatory system. The pricing chart is similar. With Medicare, providers bill Medicare, and then Medicare basically pays some discount on that original billing. So what we get to see is actual kind of a list price that the hospital has, and then the actual reality price, which is what Medicare pays for that service. So in this case, the blue graph are list prices, and the gray graph are basically real prices, prices after discounts. We got a maximum and minimum price, the average price that some provider actually billed, and we get a minimum and maximum provider that they were actually paid. So in this case, Beaumont Hospital, their average billed price was about $43,000 per patient. That puts them on the high side of the billed curve. We have about, about 24 providers that billed right around $20,000 per patient. So that's, probably the more popular pricing. On the paid side, we have about 27 providers were paid about $10,000. And we can see that Beaumont, again, is on the leading edge. They were paid $13,400. And we have about 12, 13 hospitals or providers that were around that $13,000 range. So we get some idea with this chart of the pricing power for a particular provider. So in this case, obviously Beaumont's dominant on volume, patients seen, and they're pretty strong in pricing. They bill high, they get paid at a higher level than probably the typical provider in the state of Michigan. These next charts really do provide the same basic information, but begin to look over time. So we can start to see trends over time. Also, another thing that we do at Enth is we have some interesting technology that allows us to begin to make projections. So the dashed lines on these charts are Enth making projections on the data that we've selected to look at here. So I'll start again with pricing trends per patient. So again, we're looking at per patient numbers here. The top of our blue curve is basically the highest average price that someone billed Medicare. So someone billed Medicare $73,000 was their average price per patient. The gray curve down here is the average price per patient that Medicare paid. So in this case, Medicare paid someone about $25,000 on average per patient. So that's the maximum paid. Interlaced into these charts, we have our target, which in this case is Beaumont. And we can see that Beaumont, their pricing, billed pricing was around $30,000 per patient and spiked up from 2013 to 2014 to about $40,000. So they had about a 30% increase in their billed price from 2013 to 2014. Beaumont's actual paid price is down here, and we can see that their paid price is relatively flat. They got a small boost in 2014, but really not much. And as I mentioned before, the dashed lines are projections that Enth has provided. So Enth is projecting that Beaumont's pricing is going to go upwards of $70,000 per procedure by 2020, but their paid rate is going to be more at the $15,000 range in 2020. This next chart is for the market, not for the patient. So this is basically the market size. We can look at what Beaumont's share is. Again, a little over 8%. And again, these are dollars. So what we're seeing here is that in 2011, the billed market size was around $2 billion. Dipped a little bit revenue-wise into 2013 and spiked again, as everyone seemed to have about a 25% increase in pricing into 2014. So the billed market size is around $2.25 billion. Again, the gray is the paid range, so we can see what Medicare is actually paying. And again, similarly, what they're paying dipped a little bit into 2013 and then had about a 10% increase into 2014. So the actual market size is around $855 million, again, for diseases and disorders of the circulatory system, basically having to do with the heart. Enth has provided some estimates, and we're projecting the market size in 2020 to be about $1 billion paid in 2020. These next two charts are similar to the previous two that we looked at, except we're looking at volume in this case. So again, as we recall, Beaumont was around 4,322 patients that they saw in 2014. So we can see that from 2011 to 2014, Beaumont's patients that they've seen is pretty flat, floating between about 4,000 to about 4,300. So Enth has projected that that's going to stay pretty flat for Beaumont. And again, Beaumont is setting the curve because they're the #1 provider all 4 of those years. The chart on the right is total volume for the market. So what we can see here, which is kind of interesting, is over 80,000 patients were seen in 2011, and that dipped to around 68,000 in 2014. So this trend is interesting, and if I'm a provider or a hospital, I'm a bit disturbed by this. The market size is declining in the state of Michigan, and this is actually fairly common. We've seen this in many markets. Enth is actually projected it's going to continue to decline into 2020. This is kind of opposite of what we're seeing here. We're seeing the market, as far as dollars, is going to continue to grow, yet the volume is going to decline over time. So Beaumont looks like their numbers are going to hold pretty steady, but I would be very concerned if I was one of the other hospitals in this particular set of benchmarks, the state of Michigan, if there's going to be more pressure on the market volume-wise. I wouldn't want to be investing in additional staff or additional facilities for health and human heart-related issues, because there may not be a market. It can't sustain that market. So this is just an interesting insight into this particular market phenomena. We also use some information from many sources, which is what our forte is at Enth. But we have census information, demographics, age distribution, which we also use to build into our models. The other thing we can do with this product is we can introduce customer data, which might be specific to that provider, pricing, profitability, and we can begin to make more decisions as to what markets you want to be in. If you're more competitive, profit-wise, in some particular market, you may want to make investments there, but hold off, like in this case, in diseases and disorders of the circulatory system, because the market may not be there in 5 or 6 years. Again, this is an application we built using Apache Zeppelin on Apache Spark, and what we're doing is using our product Enth to coordinate the acquisition of this data and to build the charts and make the projections. So that's kind of what we do at Enth, is go in and kind of create rather compelling intelligence. And I appreciate your time, and feel free to send us an email or give us a call and let us know if you have any additional thoughts. Thank you.